Alright, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. Going over the PowerPoint presentations for Web Development and Design Foundations with HTML5 8th edition by Terry Felke-Morris. And we're about halfway through Chapter 9. And next they talk about the fact that if you want to, you can have an input image button. Alright? Well, what they're saying is you can put an image on a button. I'm not going to run through that right now. It acts just like a button, except there's an image on it. All right. Now, notice there's also a button element. Now, this is a little bit different. We looked at submit, we looked at reset, but if you say type equal button, that's typically a button that you are going to want to put some code behind it, some JavaScript code. So we're going to hold off on that until we talk about JavaScript. All right. We've already done a little bit of this that you see in here, just so you know. The accessibility in forms. I already showed you the label. I'm going to show you field set and legend, and we'll look at tab index. And I don't really like access key, but we'll look at the rest. All right. So I showed you the label for equals. All right. And I showed you that right away because that's considered to be more accessible to people. Now I'm going to put a field set in here so you can see what these look like. And what I'll do is I'll grab just the name, password. Let's just use just the name. How about that? So we're going to say field set, and I'm going to say here legend name info. Kind of stupid, but it works. Legend. And then after we put in our name, we're going to end the field set. I believe that that's correct. We're going to find out right away. You'll know right away whether or not this worked. All right. So there's our name. Let's see how it changed. See that? This is a field set, the box that goes around here. The heading we put there, where we've got name info, that's the legend. Okay. Now I'm going to remove that. It's not that there's anything wrong with it, but in just a couple minutes we're going to come in and we're going to start using some CSS on the form to hopefully make it look a lot nicer. So I want to get rid of all this stuff because, for lack of better words, it's extraneous. Now if I was actually building this, I'd probably go and put some blank, this isn't going to put any blank lines on the actual form itself, but it makes it easier for me because now I'm separating the different fields from one another. I think this makes it, a lot easier to work with. And you may or you may not agree with that. Country, text area, checkbox, radio button, and our buttons at the end. I could even put comments in here, but you can already see it's getting some more semblance of order to it. Hopefully you agree with that. All right. So I just removed that. So this is our whole form. That's everything right now. Not at all pretty to look at, but functional nevertheless. All right, the tab index basically says as you tab your way through, all right, how is this going to work on the form? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab this tab index, and I'm going to set the tab index just for, let's set it for like the first 5 fields, just so you can see what's going on here. Okay, so first, for the first one here, tab index is 1. For our second one, tab index will be 2. For the third one, tab index will be 3. For the fourth one, the tab index will be 4. Finally, for the fifth one, tab index will be 5. Now, I typically put tab indexes in on all of them, but I just want to show you what's going on. So, refresh. All right, now notice what happens. I'm going to hit my tab key. Okay. Now it's going to where I want it to go anyway, even with the ones I haven't set, because that's the order in which I set them, the order in which I put them on the screen. But if you want to make sure that as you tab your way through, and many people like to work their way through a thing by going through tabs, all right, that you would want to set the tab index. Trying to clean that up a little bit. So there's back. There we are. You can also set access keys, which are also known as hotkeys. All right, so if you want to place the focus someplace. So for instance, if I wanted to set an access key, let's do it. We'll do a couple of those. I don't like using those. I just am not used to using them. So copy. Let's do an access key, and we'll do one so we can move real quickly. I think it'll work for this, but we're going to find out. So I'm going to say access key equals S for state. All right, so I'm going to come back and I'm going to run this again. And I'm right here, and I'm going to do a Control S. I don't want a Control S because that's a save operation. How about Alt S? No. Let's change it from an S to a Z. All right, see if that works. No, I don't want Z because that's for undo. How about a B? All right, so let's see if that works. I don't know if it will or not. So I'm right there, Control B, and it doesn't look like it did anything. Like I said, don't like access keys. Don't use them on a regular basis. So I'm not much help when it comes to them. Alright, this is what I want. Using some CSS to style the form. I'm going to just grab everything that they show in here for the CSS. And I'm going to just grab it directly, and I'm going to throw it right into my CSS file. Now I've got a label in there, and that didn't work. So let's, oops, that didn't work either. Let's copy. Let's paste that in. All right, I'm going to clean this up a little bit. So we're saying we want the form to have a background color. We want it to have its own font family. We want it to have padding all the way around it. That's what you see right there. All right, so that's what we're doing for a form. And for a label, we want our labels to float to the left. We want them to be 100 pixels wide. Just put each one of these on its own line here. We want to clear the left. We want them to be right aligned with their text. We want them to have padding and a margin. This is going to look so different when we get done. And ideally, it's going to look very, very professional, or start to look professional. Now, they put an ID here for the submit button that's called My Submit, so I'm going to have to add that before I can run this. All right, so that's everything. Let's go back, and again, for the ID button, or the submit button, I should say, we're going to set the ID equal to My Submit. So that ID button, which is right here, ID equals My Submit. We could put a name there too if we wanted to, but so now, big unveiling. There, I think that's starting to look a little better. There's still some work, as you can see, that has to be done down here. But notice how nice all of that stuff looks. All right, everything is starting to at least somewhat here come together. All right, now it looks like I didn't give this enough room with making that 100. So the first thing I want to do is I want to come in here and let's just move it up to about 150. Okay, again, it's looking better. All right. See, this still needs some work. It needs a lot of work down here. But you can see, at least the name, etc., all of this is looking very nice now. All right, because we just put some basic CSS onto the form. And I tried to explain to you what we were doing. Again, it looks more like this. All right, server-side processing. So when you click a submit button, if you have where it said action equals, if you call a file on the server, the web browser then is requesting something from a web server. The server will try to find the file and service the request directly itself. If it cannot, it may have to call another server to do its work. All right, if it can do it itself, it'll do it itself. But eventually it'll have to bring some, ideally at least, it's going to bring some HTML back to the client. Now, CGI is more or less, it says it's a protocol for a web server to pass a web page request. This is that we talked a little bit about this at the beginning of the class. That you as a user, you make an HTTP or a browser request that goes to a web server someplace, it sends you back an HTTP response. Some of the programs that you can use for server side are .php, .asp, .cfm, .jsp, and .aspx. The only one we use in the programs here during the third semester will be this one. Notice it says it uses direct execution. The script is run either by the web server itself or by something called from the web server. So the process for doing this, the web page invokes it by a form, by a hyperlink, by something. The web server executes some kind of a script. It accesses whatever the client needs, and it sends the information back to the client. It might do things like search a database, place an order, send a web page, subscribe to a newsletter. It might send a thank you to somebody. It might send them some information. There's all sorts of things that might happen. Now here's an example, and actually if you use the author's example here, this goes to the author's website. So if you fill out this form here, okay, and you have the action sent to here, and you click the submit button, so you put in here for the name Sparky Felke, the email sparky@webdevbasics.net, the comments, please contact me immediately about designing an accessible website for your company. If you put that in there and click submit, it sends that to the server. The server gives you back the information you entered right there. Some websites, as it says there, offer free remotely hosted scripts. The big thing is, anytime something is free, the old saying, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Okay. Typically, if you want your own web hosting where it'll be up more often than it's down, etc., it'll be up 99.some% of the time, you won't use free hosting. All right. Again, the one that we care about in here will be the Microsoft Active Server pages, the one on the bottom. Don't worry about the rest of it for this program. All right, a couple last things that we can put in here. Now, we could have done here, okay, is we could have come in here and when we put all this other stuff that we had in here, we're making it look pretty nice, etc. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the password for right now, and I'm going to change that to email. And I'm going to change this to email, and this. Now I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave this as text for now. It's going to be incorrect, but we'll see why in just a minute. So this will be email as well. All right. And how did that change? Watch how this changes from password to email. The problem is I can type in whatever I want. And if I click submit, I don't get an error message. All right. But if I change that so that instead of the type is text, we say the type is equal to email, I save it, come back, refresh. Now if I put in something that's not an email address and I click continue, now I get an error message. It says please include the @ sign. It notices that it's not a valid email address. So what I'm telling you is with HTML5 there are a lot more validation controls that you can put into your form on the client side before you send it off to a server. There's a URL, so it'll make sure that you put in a valid URL. There's a telephone number. Be real leery of this one because not all browsers support the telephone number box. Some do in a limited version. There's a search box that you can put in. There's a data list control, which is kind of neat. Because notice if we typed in a B here for blue, it would bring that up. All right. So we already did the favorite colors before, and we did that with a radio button. I'm sorry, with a checkbox. Let's come back in here and let's replace that checkbox that we put in for favorite color that we had right here. Let's replace that with this. All right, so we're replacing it with a data list. So I'm getting rid of all that stuff. And we've got the colors. Okay, I don't know what happened there. So, how does that change? Well, the easiest way is to put in something, refresh. Okay, now for favorite color, oh, I don't know what happened there. Data list, ID equal colors, option, list, red, red, blue. Huh. The only thing we didn't use was this one right here. Oh, I didn't have this in here either. So we will put this in. Color. Next line. Okay, let's see if that made it look the way we want it to look. There, so we got favorite color. Now notice, you can see it does give a drop down here. But notice if I type in an L, it only shows me now what the colors that have an L in them. Blue, yellow, and black. If I type in an R, the R from red and the R from green, etc. Okay? Alright. There's a slider control, okay, where you can, put in something. There's a spinner control. Anytime you've ever done anything like this, if I do a Control P, for example, Control P to print, there's a spinner control right there that says how many copies do I want to print. Right, so that's an example of a spinner. There's a calendar control. That's kind of nice. There's a color control. Let me put in a couple more of these. So we'll put in this. Again, this is getting so big that it's going to be hard to keep it all showing on the screen at one time. So I apologize if it does that and you can't see it all. So we're going to call this here hire date. Okay, and we'll say that here. We'll call it hire date. And on the next line, we'll have a date. Okay, and a BR tag here. So let's see what we did. So there's hire date. Notice if I click, it brings up a date control. So if I chose that date, boom, that was the hire date. Kind of nice. All right. Almost through with the chapter. Color control. We could have even done favorite color that way if we wanted to. Notice what happens when you do it. It brings up a color palette. I'm going to leave that one off. So, practicing with the form. Practice makes perfect. You're never perfect, but practice makes better. So in this chapter, we had about a dozen objectives. We described some common uses for forms. We created forms. We looked at the form tag, the different input tags. We looked at a text area. We did a select with option for the drop-down. We looked at accessibility, mainly through the use of the label for equals. I showed you quickly the field set and legend. We did not customize the button, but I explained to you what that was. We did use some CSS to style the form. All right, we used a couple of new HTML5 controls, including the email control and the data list, the calendar. Okay. I talked a little bit about some of the features and uses of server-side processing. Okay. And we talked about some of the resources, free and otherwise, for processing on the web. Now that's it for Chapter 9. I'm going to try to, as soon as I can, come in and clean this up so it looks a little bit nicer. All right. It'll take a little bit of work. Not a lot, but it'll take a little bit of work. And I'm more than willing to do that. It's not a big thing one way or the other. Okay? All right. So, I just wonder, I was looking in here under that drop-down list. Right there. We added another BR tag, if that would help. And it's not what I expected. Oh, that was it, the country one. I wanted to put one after the state one. We never had a BR tag there. That makes that look a lot nicer. This is a little goofed up now, the zip code. All right. So I have to do a little bit of work to clean that up. Let's see, what else is there? The country is okay. It should be pushed down a little, but that's no biggie. The comments, not terrible. We could push that over too. Favorite color is okay. This is goofed up here. The gender and the buttons are goofed up. So it doesn't look too bad. It doesn't look, down to the zip code or so, at the beginning of the zip code, it's okay the way it is. I'll try to see if I can clean up the rest of it, okay, before too long. How's that? In the next chapter, there is no code. There are no new tags. There's no new anything. Rather, we talk about the HTML development process. So I'll be back with that very shortly.